Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Welcome everybody to our session. Good afternoon once again. My name is Akacho Ikirapa, one of the co-founders of IAM Network. And we're very excited to be here today and to have round 3 of our 3-part series on how to communicate with clarity and confidence. For those of you who are here in our previous sessions, you will know that we've been discussing how to communicate, particularly in our careers. So in the first session, we discussed how to write CVs, how to get referees, and we also looked at some examples of how to do interviews. The second part looked at how to readjust our lens. And the reason we chose that topic is because we know that we're all going through tough times in COVID, and we just want to get everybody to change their perspective about how we're all adapting in this new normal of ours. Today I'm excited because we have our key speakers, Joanne and Paloma, who will talk to us about finance and also get us to change our perspective about how we save and how we manage the money we have. Before I start, let me give you a small snapshot of the session we had last time.
I started wearing the glasses in standard 3. Now my dad chose the frame for me. You have no idea what he picked out. He picked out brown, horn-rimmed frames. Can you imagine what it did to my self-confidence and to my V? So as I reflect on this period, the adjusting of my lens, of my spectacle lens, without and with my knowledge, it shaped and continues to shape the current me. So I will thus reiterate, self-examination is very, very key in building your confidence levels.
So for those of you who missed our previous session, you're very welcome to log on to our YouTube channels. And we're also quite excited today because we've hit a milestone and we're live on Facebook. So please ask your friends to like our page and ask them to also follow us on IAM Network. Before we start, I would like our speakers to briefly introduce themselves. Joanne?
Thank you. Thank you, Akacho. My name is Joanne Kabiru. I am a coach, a certified coach. I do enjoy making people or enabling you to be the best you can be. I also have been in the East African stock market for over 15 years, handling operations and administration in those fields. And on top of that, I do enjoy mentoring of the youth, hence why we came together with Akacho and Paloma to set up IAM Network. So karibuni sana.
Thank you, Joanne. Next we have Paloma. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Akacho. Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Paloma Gatabaki. My background is in communications, in writing. Currently, I work as the producer of the KTN political show called Point Blank, which is hosted by Tony Gashoka.
Thank you. And we're also looking forward to hearing your perspective on communicating, both orally and also in the written word. So as we start, we would just like to get your opinion on how many of you save? And this is just so that we can have an idea of the type of people we're dealing with. We may be dealing with people who are very good at saving. So it would just be good to know, do you save or do you struggle saving, like many of us? About half of us have answered, so you have about 10 more seconds. Okay, I'm about to close the poll. So this is great. We have a majority of savers amongst us. And I believe we can also learn how to improve on this saving culture. So without further ado, let me welcome Joanne to take us through principles of saving and investments. Karibu, Joanne.
Asante, Asante Akacho. 1 minute, I load the presentation. Okay. Karibuni sana. So today I will be taking you through recalibrating your finances. That is a tough word. If I dare to say it in one marathon, the R's and the L's might give me a bit of a challenge, but it tells you which zone of the world I come from in this country of ours. Yes, so recalibrating your finances. That just means to reorganize your finances. Okay, I will take us through 5 principles. Finance is quite broad, and especially when it comes to personal finance, I will start into it. We do expect that there will be another session or 2 that will take us through the finances, but this is a great place for us to start so that we are at least clear on how we are doing our stuff. So there will be 5 principles today that we will be talking about. The first one is to set your priorities. Set your priorities. So the question is, what are your priorities right now? What are your goals in life? I know most of us are either newly employed or we still live with our parents, but we still need to have our goals in life. What are you looking forward to? What do you anticipate your life to look like? Then we work backwards. One common way I like looking at it is, you know, we are influenced by the people we live around, either our parents or our uncles, our aunties, our family friends who we really admire. So those are the people who will help us set the goals of how we want to look like in future. So coming forward, we need to make a budget. That's principle number 2. You need to have a budget. I don't know how many of us actually do have a budget. And the other thing to note that is there is no small amount for budgets. Whether it is 10,000 shillings, whether it's 5,000 shillings, whatever amount it is, there is no small amount to budget. You just have to accept that. There's no small amount of budgeting. Of course, given that we are most of us who are Christians, we do believe in the tithing principle. So you tithe 10% to your church of choice. The second item is that you need to save 10% or more of whatever money you make. 10% or more. Then you live on the remaining 80%. By living, I mean anything, whether it's going out to the club or whether it's going for a movie or going for a hike, you are going to be living on the remaining 80%, not touching the first 20s. Okay, the first 20, which is the tithing and the savings. There, I wanted to give us a book to read. For those of you who are readers, please look for a book called The Richest Man in Babylon by Richard Clayson. It's a very nice book. It's very small, and then the print is very good. I'm very specific personally about the print type. So the print type is quite good and friendly. Yeah, so look out for The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a very good book that you can have for the rest of your life. So I have samples of budgets. I put together some sampling of budgets just to give you an idea. The one thing you need to note is that this you can do on Excel, you know, whether it's on your phone or whether it's on your laptop, you can use Excel. So for the students, I took an example of having maybe 10,000 as your pocket money, which you're given every month. Of course, we talked about the tithe, which is 10%, which is 1,000. Then you have your savings of another 1,000. Then you have your school club fees. So for example, maybe you belong to debating club, or you belong to the church club, or you belong to, you know, some sport club. You have those club fees that you pay. The benefit of this is that you pay those club fees probably once a term, which means that for the rest of the other months, you will be able to save that amount. So you can see that as a saving. Then there is your airtime, of course, because you know you spend money, data and things like that. Then coming to the other one is the supermarket fee. So the assumption there is that you're spending 500 shillings per weekend in the supermarket, and there are 4 weekends, so you have spent about 2,000. What do I mean by that? These are the things that you will not, you know, you might go and tell your parent about it and they will tell you it's not a priority right now. So maybe you want a certain biro or a certain notebook, it looks, you know, in a certain way. That is where you will get the money to do that. That's 2,000. So it's assuming you have 500 per weekend. Or maybe you like me, there are some things, I have a weakness for the wows. I think you know the wows, those colorful sugared snacks. So if it's those wows, you go and buy your wows and nobody will ask you, go and sit in your room and, you know, enjoy those wows with all your heart. So the final one is your weekend outings. Of course, either you're hiking or you're, you know, going for an ice cream or going for a movie. That's assuming no corona things. In these corona times, that's a bit of a different statement right there. So you could be hiking, maybe going to Karura Forest or the Arboretum. So you do need to allocate that. You will notice that all those fees now add up to 10,000 shillings. There are some expenses there that could fall under your parents, depending on how you negotiate with them. There's the salon fee or the barber fee. There's your transport to and from school. Maybe you're being given a lift by your mom or your dad or your guardian. And then, of course, there are your books and your pens, what you will be using for school. On the other hand, there's the side of the employee. Maybe you're newly employed and you've started off with a salary of maybe 50,000. In that 50,000, there's Mr. KRA who we all meet, especially if you're employed. You will meet Mr. KRA who charges 30%. Every country charges its own tax. So Kenya's tax is 30%. So 30% of the 50 is 15,000. Then there is tithe. Tithe, of course, we had mentioned that before, and savings. Then the assumption is that you're not living in your parents' house. You're renting somewhere. Maybe you're renting a bed sitter or a one-bedroom house. So your rent there is 7,000. Then, of course, you have your transport going to and from work. I took a case scenario of maybe Langata. Langata, you pay 50 bob to town and then 20 bob to Westlands. So it means you've spent 70 bob on one trip. By the time you're doing 2 trips, it is 140. So every day you spend 140. For 20 days, that comes to 2,800. The next thing is your weekly meals. You're eating, of course, you've gone to work, so maybe you're spending 250 for 19 days. I counted 19 days because maybe there's one day that you chose to carry home food. Another good alternative and a good habit to have is to just carry your food from home all the time. That you will find that even that 4,750 could greatly reduce. So possibly you could treat yourself to every Friday, maybe you'll treat yourself to a lunch. So if you're treating yourself to a lunch, maybe chipos with a sausage or a samosa or something, you will find that if you're spending in that week, once a week, that 300, you will have spent in a month 1,200. Imagine from that 4750 that now it will have come down to 1,200. Of course, it increases the amount of money that you'll have for float for other things. Then you have your salon or barber fee. I know for the guys, 2,000, yeah, for the guys, 2,000 is a lot of money, but for the ladies, that's a totally different story. So the 2,000 for the hair bill. Then we have the house shopping. So possibly you're buying a few things and unga here and there, or some nyama for cooking, or some vegetables. That is the 5,000. Then you do have the airtime. Of course, we are all under the airtime billing, so we have airtime. And then, of course, there's the weekend outings. The assumption there is 2,500. That is maybe one weekend in the month. But as I mentioned before with the weekly meals, if you saved money within the weekly meals, you will have money to spend within the weekend outings. And the other assumption is that for the electricity and water, it is being catered for by your landlord. So that means you're able to budget your cash accordingly. So you see, you have to do that. If you're not able to note this, one way to do this is to do what we call tracking of your expenses. You just buy a simple notebook, a Karatasi brand that's probably 20 bob, and then track every single day how much money you're spending on every single thing. Whether you bought an Orbit, a PK, a juicy fruit, write it down. Every single little expense counts. And then you will do an analysis after 3 months, and you will be able to see where your cash is going to. Okay, so the third principle is to make sure you pay your bills. So the question is, do you have any bills in the first place? So you're either in one category, either you're living alone. Of course, there you have to pay your bills. They need to be covered. You need to pay your rent on time. You need to do your transport. But if you're living with family, one good thing to have, a noble thing to do, is to contribute to the utilities in the house. It could be your internet, it could be the DSTV or the Zuku, or even water. You just look at it and you tell your guardian or your parents that you want to contribute at least once in a while, to make sure, of course, when we live together, we need to think about one another. The fourth principle is to control your debt. Whether you have made any money promises, either to your relatives or to your friends, you need to practice being your word at all times, because maybe you borrowed for a very simple thing like going out, and then the day that you actually are having an interview, you have nobody to ask for that money because you have already exhausted those people. So please learn to control your debt and to also pay it off if you owe anybody any money, whether it is 50 shillings, whether it is 500 shillings, please pay it off. So coming to the students, either you're doing your help, even after you finish for the newly working, you will meet with help and you need to honor your payments after that. And if you're borrowing, as I had mentioned about the parents and the relatives, make sure that you pay the amounts that you had borrowed. So finally, there's the investments. We cannot have talked about finance without mentioning a bit about investments. The question to ask yourself is which ones that you know about. I have categorized them into two types of fields. There's one that is short-term and medium-term. So there we have the savings accounts, we have the chamas, either they are merry-go-round or just investing. There's the shares in the Nairobi stock market. There's the SACCOs that you put money and then you're able to borrow money after a certain period. There you could either borrow the amount you yourself have placed or additional, but when you're borrowing the additional, it has to be guaranteed by somebody else as well. Then there, of course, there's the government of Kenya who borrows from from Kenyans, you and I, when they want to fund part of their budgets. So they do borrow and they guarantee us a certain amount of funds back in terms of interest. So under the long term, there are things like land, there are other insurance products, and back again to the treasury products of the government. Those government products, why they fall in between the two, even the insurance could fall between the two, is because of the period of time that you're doing that investment. If it could be 20 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it is just up to you for what period of time that you will be doing that. Okay, so there are some things that any class cannot teach you. Those are self-ingrained habits that need to be taught out of yourself, and you will have to push yourself to be able to do these things. The first one is the discipline of saving. You just have to do it. That thing of 10%, 10% is a basic minimum. At one point of my life, I was saving up to 35%. And it is just ingrained once you start, and every time, like maybe if you're employed and you get a raise, you are supposed to save part of that raise. Don't just eat all of it. And then once you get into the habit, you're able to live on the remaining at all times. And of course, you know that a habit is cultivated in 21 days. So the more you do something, the more you're ingrained into doing it, and you will never feel the pinch. You will be used to living within that method of saving. The other thing is the sense of timing. When do you start the investments? There's no early time to start. I mean, you can start even now, whether you're having the 10 shillings, whether you're having the 1,000 shillings, it's never too early to start the investment. So you just start and then keep at it and then diversify it. The final thing is emotional detachment. In fact, the best way to put this is using Will Smith's quote, which says that too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want, to impress people they don't like. Yes, it plays a lot on our emotions, what we like, what we don't like. I mean, even the people that we are trying to impress, some of them even have no clue about what you're on about. Yes, so we need to learn to detach our emotions and then learn to wait, save for it, and then buy whatever it is that you wanted to buy. So finally, I will close with a quote from Brian Tracy. He's one of the good motivational speakers and also very good on financial coaching. He says that financial security and independence is like a three-legged stool which rests on savings, insurance, and investments. The three go hand in hand. You can start, you have to start somewhere, of course, so you probably be starting on savings, then you start the insurance, and then you go to investments. But for us, the goal should be to reach that we have a fully three-legged stool that is comfortable and seated well. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you for those wise words of reminding us about the importance of financial security. And my take-home message for me is I need to remember the three-legged stool of savings, insurance, and investments. So I can see many questions coming in. And Joanne, we actually have some accountants here. Someone noted that your employee budget exceeded the earning by 50 shillings. So take note of that before we go to the Q&A. I'm just about to launch the next poll, which looks at our source of income. So we just want to get an idea of how many among us are employed full-time, part-time, so that we can also guide you as per your needs. And all this data is anonymous, so don't worry, we don't know who is voting where. This is just to help us as we give you feedback. We have about 10 more seconds. So we can see we have a mix of participants. About half of the participants are employed full-time. We have just over 10% who are employed part-time. About 25% do not have regular work, and 13% are unemployed. So we'll take note of that as we go to the Q&A. And without further ado, I welcome Paloma for her session. Karibu, Paloma.
Thanks, Akacho. Thanks, Joanne, for your session. You know, you missed by 50 shillings, but at least it was not like the Ministry of Finance by a few billion. So I think you're quite fine with that. You know, as we mentioned earlier, you know, when we began our sessions on this communicating with clarity and confidence, we realized that the subject was so vast that we had to split it into 3. Now that's why this session, round 3, is called Recalibrating Your Finances. And this is based on your feedback from our last session, last month. And you can also catch up with our clips on our YouTube channel, which is I Am Network KE, Online Mentorship, or our Facebook page. So as Akacho, Joanne, and myself, when we were discussing the subject, we realized quite quickly that Joanne would be the lead on this because she's our finance guru. And then Akacho quickly took the role as the moderator. And, you know, we're like, okay, fine, you know, she's pretty good at it. So that left me. What shall I cover? So I was looking back at them online, and they were looking back at me and asking me, so Paloma, what are you going to talk about? So after a few laughs and just a bit of a reflection, I actually put forth, why can't I talk about negotiating one's worth? So, well, here I am. Hopefully, I'm not staring back at you with a dear look eyes plastered all over my face. Now, as Joanne has put forth about tackling our own finances, this is something that requires a lot of forethought and a lot of reality checks. This is even more apparent because of our new abnormal, which is the COVID-19. Now, Joanne, when I was looking through your line items of the budget, I realized there's one that I have completely removed, and that is my nail game. My nail game budget has been lost. I mean, COVID-19 has, yeah, it's done some damage to that. But as we are going through the subject, let me take you to a quote by Warren Buffett, the American investor, the philanthropist, the business tycoon. And he remarked, price is what you pay. Value is what you get. Let me repeat that again. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. So I'll put it forth to you today as my question that will cover this subject. What is your value? Now, the definition of value that I'm using today is this: the regard that something is held to, its importance, its worth, its usefulness. Let me repeat that again. The definition of value that I'm using today is this. Yeah, the regard that something is held to, its importance, its worth, or its usefulness. So, how do you value yourself? Are you confident about yourself? Are you clear about your own worth? And how do you communicate your own importance? Now, as you may have noticed in prior sessions, I'm absolutely predisposed to using my own personal experiences. So I'll start with my first job. Now I've worked, continue still to work with my family's publishing firm. And I started doing all sorts of things around writing, proofreading, editing, sub-editing. Now, when it came to be formally recognized as an employee, my employment contract was verbal. My terms and my remuneration was concluded at the dining room table. Now, at that time, the publication was weekly. So it meant keeping late hours and spending time not just with the writers and with the editors, but also with the printers to ensure that the hard copy was delivered to the vendors by 5:30 a.m. Monday morning. So in the initial role that I had, not only was I a writer, a proofreader, a sub-editor, I also became the KYM, yani any and every job possible that they could hand over to me, I did it. So taking the hard copy of the 48-page magazine together with sourcing and looking for the pictures to the printers so that they could, at that time, does not compute it to a plate. They used to chapa like a photo. You chapa like a photo on that thing, and then they take it to the plate. They put it there, then it goes on to the print thing, and then you have to wait for the newsprint to dry, and then they have to bind and fold it. It was quite a long process. So by the time that magazine, the hard copy of the magazine actually reaches the vendor, you are actually quite physically and mentally exhausted. Remember, we have a deadline. The deadline was it had to be there by 5:30 a.m. Monday morning. So what happened to me? I can say this, my dining room contract, or let me use today's word or this week's word, my entanglement contract only covered my role as a writer, a proofreader, and a sub-editor. So while these other tasks enabled me to actually see what goes into producing a magazine, they were not recognized in my entanglement contract. Now, as I spoke with a few of my friends who actually worked in their family firms, we actually realized that we're actually going through the same issues, namely that we're doing quite a lot of work outside the scope that we have actually been tasked to do, and then we're not receiving the monetary worth of it. And we also realized that we didn't raise this issue in the office. We raised it at the dining room. Now, I believe this lack of formality encouraged what I would call the discount entanglement rate. Now, the lesson we all drew from this is, yes, we work in the family firm, perhaps even they have reconfigured or restructured the company shareholding to incorporate us. However, if our boss, who happens to be our father, our mother, maybe our auntie, uncles, or even our sister or brothers, if they were to employ outside of the family, would they get away with the terms that they offered us? Absolutely not. Now, interestingly enough, when we gathered the courage and booked appointments with our bosses in the office, we all received positive responses. It was actually like they were waiting for us to realize our own worth. So, my suggestion, and based on my own experience, is to be clear and to be confident about your worth. Communicate the same to your boss, who just so happens to be your father or your mother, your auntie or your uncle, or maybe even your sister. Communicate your worth. It's very, very important. Second and finally, is my current experience that I'm actually based on many years of maybe what Joanne would call the hunky-dory-ness regarding how clear I am about communicating my consultation fee. Now, I don't know what it is about money, at least for me, and stating my terms. I don't know, it's like there's a halo all over it, but I have a problem in this particular area. So Joanne and Akacha have been coaching me on how to express and put it on paper that these are my terms, and yeah, we can negotiate, but these are my terms. So it just so happened that recently I was approached to give a person a complete and total overhaul. Now, when I shared this exciting news, because the person is quite serious, eh? When I shared this news with Akacho and Joanne, Akacho's first comment was, "Paloma, have you forwarded your invoice?" So I was like, Allah, see, they just called me for ideas. Then you should have just seen Joanne's face. She just chimed in and said, "Paloma, they called you for your ideas. If they were able to do it, then they could have done it, but they are not able to. And since they can't, they called you and they're looking for your input. Your input has value. Can you quantify it now?" It was quite an eye-opener of a Zoom conversation. So, but it's actually, I think even some of the things that we are talking about in our training packages, that these are the things that we need to realize. What is your value? Your ideas are a value. So to cut a long story short, I quickly put together an invoice, and right now I am negotiating my terms. So thank you, Akacho and Joanne. Thank you very much for that. So whether it's your friend, whether it's your neighbor, yeah, whether it's your former university mate, when you're asked to put forward a proposal on that kind of sort, people are asking for your thought, for your input. They're asking for your ideas, and you must quantify it and put a value to it and give an invoice for it. I think, Akacho, Joanne, with those few remarks, Kenyan style, let me hand back over to you.
Thank you so much. I think everybody's learning something. So we know many of us had those dining room conversations. Of course, those days for us, our parents wanted us to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher. You know, those are the conventional jobs. So I know some also here maybe have had that struggle. And once you now leave, should I say, the family business to go into formal employment, those tips are very critical, because at times, I think we also suffer with undervaluing ourselves, because you don't believe you're worth putting a price. So thank you for that highlight, Paloma. And we look forward also to hearing more about how the negotiation is going, and we believe it will go well. So before we move to the next section, I'll just do the last polls, which look at where do most of us borrow our money? Is it from friends, parents, workmates? We know Fuliza is a very easy channel for many of us. For those of you who are married, do you go to your spouse, other family members, like your siblings, or do you go to the circle? And this one is multiple choice, so you can choose more than one avenue of where you borrow money from. I have 60%, so I'll give you 10 more seconds. So as we can see, the SACCO and the Fuliza are tied at 57%. So in second place, we have our friends. So half of us borrow money from our friends. We have about 20% who borrow from their spouse, 14% from other family members, and 7% from our friends. So it looks like people don't really have friends in their workplace since nobody put workmates. So that's very interesting. And then the last poll we have is on investments. Where do you likely invest your money? So do you have a savings account, a chama, SACCO, government securities? So that can be either the treasury bills or you invest in the stock exchange. I know recently many of us have also been getting into trading Forex with the multi-level marketing. We also have the money markets and life insurance. And another Kenyan investment is buying a plot. So how many of us have plots here? Give you about 10 more seconds to finish your voting. So the biggest place of investment is the SACCO, where almost over 70% have investments there. The next one is the savings account, 56%. And that is followed by insurance products, money markets and life insurance. 40% also have a plot of land. And the last two are the chama and government security. So Joanne, it looks like you need to pull some clients to invest in the stock exchange. So thank you very much for sharing with us. And now I will proceed to some of the questions we have for the panelists. Joanne, there is a question from Rachel, who asks, what percentage of your salary should go to rent?
Good question, good question. The rate proposed is 30%. 30% of your income should be going to rent. So in fact, when I saw the question, I did the quick math for that employee of ours, and I think we were at 15%, which is very good. You need to keep it lower. You shouldn't take 30 as the benchmark. Eh? You could do even 25 or 20, as long as you're comfortable.
Okay. Do you have advice for people who probably earn, low income? So does that mean if you're an intern, then, and you can't get a bedsitter maybe for that 7K, how would you advise somebody?
Okay, most of the times, those who are living like that would be really living with a relative, either an uncle, an aunt, or an older brother or sister. Most likely that is where you would be beginning from. Of course, until you get your own source of income so that you start being independent. Being independent starts by living alone. Yeah, so the Kenyan scenario is, or the African scenario is that you would be living with one of your relatives, highly likely.
Thank you. So there's another question from Natasha, which is to the youth on this forum. So she's asking, what is the balance to exchanging your value for money and exchanging it for experience. Can I throw that? If somebody willing to answer, or Paloma, you can try to give your experience when working with the youth.
Just repeat the question again.
What is the balance to exchanging your value for money and exchanging it for experience?
That is that came from, who asked the question?
Natasha Musyoki.
Natasha, excellent question. Some time ago, I think it was early on in the year, there was a social media Twitter exchange about this subject. And it was about, what do you call, internship. Do you get paid for your, as an intern or not? Again, if you notice, social Twitter is also one of my pet peeves, social media. So I followed the exchange quite interestingly, and there was a balance, a 50-50, between what experience are you getting as an intern vis-a-vis should you be paid for that. So there was quite a bit of a heated exchange. Now, in my time, I shan't go back to which time it was, but in my time as an intern, we weren't paid. So you were basically on your parents' dough. So you asked them for the money to take you to the office, and you pretty much did quite a lot of work. Now, what I found in that first 1 month, because internship usually covers 3 months, in that first 1 month, the company was also evaluating how serious you are. So as much as you're being given the KYM jobs, go and pick up do the print work, go to the photocopier, go and take this and that, check on the coffee mugs and etc. These things, even taking the coffee to the boss, means that you also, when you get into his office or her office, then you're able to listen in and listen into a conversation that he or she was having with a client. So and then they would actually ask me, Paloma, why don't you sit down and join us? And from there on, you start gaining valuable experience. I started writing down the minutes. And from there on, even now developing concepts. So remember, that was during my first 1 month. Now in the second month, I think I did quite sufficiently enough that the company then offered me the transport and food budget. So yes, to answer your question, there's a give and take. I mean, let's be very real in this world. As a student, when you're coming from a student, no one knows your possibilities. They just know that you have gone to school or you're attending the school. In fact, even at that time, you don't even know what your GPA is, or even how many classes that you are attending at that particular time. So you're being evaluated on the job. Now, as an intern, as a student, you need to now internalize all that you're being given and go out of your way to prove to those people that you deserve as a sort of compensation. And from then on, even then get in line to be recruited for the job that's coming. So even as I was finishing my part, that by the time I was graduating, I got an offer letter. And not because the first thing I did was grumble about, oh, I can't reach here, but because I actually put in the work and the effort, and then they rewarded it. So it's actually a 50-50. I mean, you can get a lot of people a lot of employers who simply use you. And they are there. There are many cases here, left and right and center. And when they use you, they're also not very kind in terms of how they treat you, in terms of the language they use towards you. So we do have a lot of that. Let's not hide from the fact of that. But that again is also a good learning experience. It will also enable you to develop your communication skills. You'll be able to become bolder and franker in your own disposition. And it will take you quite far than someone who's babysitting you like a panda bear on the side there and taking you, oi, Paloma here, do this, do that, you know. So it will give you a backbone. So it's a 50-50 in my thinking.
Thanks for that. And if anybody has a question also, if you want to unmute your mic, you can go ahead, just let me know in the chat box, I can give you a chance. So we have comments who are saying, thank you for the presentation. We have a question from Rachel, who asks, how do you package and present your value for your ideas or for how much you're worth? So how, I know you talked to us about something, your last sentence was something about, was it knowing your price and the value? So maybe highlight that again, Paloma.
You know, value is an interesting word. It's actually what, and if I can take you back literally to what I was saying with the quotation and then what I was using then, what do you consider as a value? Yeah, how do you value yourself? You can value yourself as a 500,000 shillings a month person, or you can value yourself as a 10,000 amount person. But you know, I think value as well also depends on your confidence levels. And when I say your confidence levels in your abilities to do the job. So you can very well go anywhere. I can go to Akacho's place of in her company and say that I will offer you these skills in training your communication staff, and do a very, very good presentation. And this is my value. So for this package of your for your 5 employees, I will offer it at 10,000 shillings a month, something like that. But if I just put the package just out there and then wait back and wait for Akacho to give me an offer, you're putting everything in her seat. You're not giving yourself a value. So you need to sit down, reflect, look inside yourself and ask, what do I offer that I do so well that I know that I am worth this value? 2, go out there and look at the marketplace. Often enough, you see a lot of job offers in very many channels, and they do give a certain bracket of how much this consultancy is worth and stuff like that. So you can be able to package based on that. But again, it also depends on you. How do you value yourself? What do you think you're worth? And it will come out in your work, it will come out in your disposition, it will come out everywhere.
Thank you.
I want to add a comment. Yes, I want to add a comment to that. There are 2 sides of that coin. There's the undervaluing and there's the overvaluing. If you're almost everybody in the population tends to fall in the undervaluing section. So if you're undervaluing, that's the thing. It's quite tough. You almost have to do self-talk that it's okay to ask. In fact, there's normally a gender discussion or a gender debate about that. If the guys were to talk about it, how guys talk about it is very different from how ladies talk about it. And it is totally well known, and it doesn't matter the level it is at. How guys bring it out themselves is totally different from a lady. A lady will sit back and she's like, oh yeah, you know, oh yeah, they're doing this for me, you know. But I mean, we need to get there where we are all valued the same way, because the results being delivered are the same from both sides. The other thing is about overvaluing. Again, don't go and overvalue yourself and, you know, you go there stating 500,000 shillings and then the actual deliverable that you're delivering, I mean, is less than 10,000. I mean, there's nothing as bad as the vibe that's going to go out there about, so they'll be there saying, oh yeah, she promised me something, but then look at it. This one I can go and get somewhere doing it at 10K. I mean, don't go overvaluing. There is a big saying within management or within business that you under-promise and over-deliver. It is better to over-deliver, whether it is in your performance, whether it is in whatever it is that you're doing, it is better to over-deliver than to over-promise and then you fall short. That one is it should be a life principle that you make sure always over-deliver on whatever it is that you're doing. Give the value. Let them be saying that, oh my gosh, I was charged 10,000 shillings, but I actually think the essence or the true essence of this should be 30,000. Then you will find it growing. It grows naturally on its own. Yes, thank you, Akacho.
Thank you, Joanne. I could also share my experience where I have also been in jobs as has been correctly said, where you think you negotiate, and then once you start, you realize people are even earning even up to double what you are quoting. And it's unfortunate, but the market does not protect employees. So my advice also to you would be, you have to do your homework. The human resource is not going to be akiwoye, you know, she didn't know what her worth was. So you have to do your homework, ask your colleagues or ask your friends. And if you don't know people in that sector, you have to now look for people in that sector. Right now, we actually have a human resource professional on the call, and it's helpful because he's also asking me, you know, how do people here build their personal value? And for me, I believe if you want to have a good negotiating power, one, you have to be very good at your job, you have to be reliable, and you have to produce quality work. So the same way the client went to look for Paloma because of her work, and they know the product she produces, you have to package yourself in that way. And even more importantly, as Joanne has said correctly, be confident, because for those of you who have studied negotiation, they always say, do not accept the first offer. Of course, you can say that if you have a job, but in some cases, I understand you may not have a job and may not be that confident. But if you have a job and you know that somebody is undervaluing you, or the person is actually exploiting or taking advantage, you can say no and then see what will happen. Because if they really need you, they will increase what they're offering. And that is the point, because I think for ladies, we've suffered that. Men are very sure about what they want, but the ladies at times, we always feel sorry, or we feel like we have to make apologies. So I would just advise you to be confident and do your homework before you apply for a job. Another question we have here is for Joanne. Is money market a good guarantee investment? What is the minimum that somebody can put? And where is the best source of information to advise the person if they want to do that? So this is money markets.
Okay, just repeat the two under money market there.
Is it a good guarantee investment?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the minimum amount that someone can put?
Okay. Yes, the money market fund is a very good investment to put your funds into. To know about the different, most companies have their own different, what they call fact sheet. It's a sheet that just explains a little bit more about their type of funds. 3/4 of the time, you'd be looking at the interest rate that they are going to be promising you for the amount of money that you want to place. So yes, it is guaranteed, unless you see that the company has fundamental business issues, you know, that doesn't escape any type of company. I mean, wherever you want to put your money, you want to be sure that the company is not having challenges. It's just similar to the shares, the stock market. Even in the stock market, you normally would be looking at how are those companies performing. You would go putting somewhere where you're hearing their CEO problems or CFO problems, or, I mean, it's only right and normal that you would not be putting your money in places like that. So those are the things that you'd be looking out for. Even the minimum amount that you're asking about, each company is very different. One would tell you 3,500, another one will tell you 5,000. So each company is different. Just go out, get a couple of them, and analyze the different interest rates, because they won't all be the same, and analyze the minimum amounts and see what works for you.
I think I was on mute. Mosete is asking, how do you negotiate, especially for consultancies, to get the maximum? Do you ask for your rate in days or hours?
Akacho, I think you're our consultant guru.
All right. So I myself, I'm a consultant, and because I'm in health, we tend to work long term. So for me, I normally quote my rate in days, but I know it probably depends on your field. So I'm guessing probably like Paloma said, maybe if someone is calling you to do an event, or your job is probably not a full 8-hour day, and the person just needs you for half a day, you could be justified in having an hourly rate. But the majority of consultants I know, they charge per day.
There was another question by Daisy.
Hi, Daisy. Daisy, can you unmute your mic? Is she still on?
Yes, I'm on.
Yes.
Daisy, hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Why don't you share with us your question?
My question is to do with just when you are either applying for a new job or during interviews, there's this question that comes around about how much money you were earning before. And I'm guessing that's used to determine how much they'll pay you, or to determine if you are greedy for money, so to speak. So my concern is usually for most first jobs, people are not necessarily paid the highest amounts ever. So usually you'll find that a lot of them, if you have conversations with them, they're being usually underpaid, especially graduates. Maybe someone's earning between 30 and 50,000 for their work, and they've maybe gotten experience for over 3 years. So my question is, how do you negotiate that? Can you then say, just give me the budget for this role, and then I determine for myself if I'm taking this job or not, as opposed to it being sort of a trick? Sorry, that's many sense.
Daisy, what field do you work in?
I'm a journalist. I work in the media.
Ah, my field. Now,
Yes.
our field, wow, we are very underpaid.
Yes.
And we're very many.
Uh-huh.
So the big networks, the big publishing firms, they get away with employing quite a number of people, all who are graduates, for the least amount of money, and obviously overworking. Now, there are two things that happen from this. You have 14, 15-hour days, and you gain a lot of experience, but your bank account does not reflect that. And so when you're going to your next job, the beauty about this is when you're going to your next job is that especially if you're going to a PR firm or anything else, because that's where a lot of our journalists transition to PR firms or to government agencies in their communication departments, is that because on our CV that we have said we have come from the nation, for example, or that we have come from the Standard, for example, they tend then to respect that and then give a higher premium for it. So to go back to the question of negotiation, yes, these people already know what the basic salary for a first-year journalist is. So if you are being paid about 35,000 shillings net, and then you put there that you're paid about 55,000 shillings, they already know that you are, way off base. Because in most cases as well, that communication manager or the HR guy has come from that same nation, from the same Standard. So it does not help you to then have a different code. But because that they have come from that environment, and they know that if you've been able to survive the harsh, and it's quite actually very tasking environment that you have been working in. As I said, you're doing more than 12, 14 hours. I think now it's been reduced to because of the COVID, but generally your hours are quite tasking during the week. Then they know that you're capable of meeting their deadlines, doing the work, and doing that to that capability that it was actually published in the Standard or in the Nation. So they will have a premium based on that, and the salary should be higher. would you ask about their budget and then say, if your budget is 100K, may I want 120K? I think you'll be shown out of the you'll be shown out of the room. But yes, so you definitely don't lie about your salary, especially in our world, because they do know our salaries. They do know our starting salaries the first year, the second year, as you transition to the full-time position that you are in. They really do have an idea about that. So don't lie about it, but make sure that when you obviously when you've been called in, they've actually looked at your work experience and you've put it there. They can see that you channel this amount of articles per week, so you're capable of the job.
Right.
I want to comment from the other industries. Yes, you would suffer the same thing about that rate that you enter with. It's still the same, even on other sectors. You cannot quote an amount that you're not getting, because what happens is, or how karma works, is that maybe they know 1 or 2, 3 people in the same company that you're working with. So they will go and say, oh, but Joan showed up here and she claimed to be on this pay. And then they say, but no, that was not true. Shortly, there are documents flying up and down the countryside on emails showing where you are, the true picture of where you are. Whether or not, I mean, it goes and cuts down your integrity. And you don't want to have your integrity being questioned, because it means your future is also being affected going forward. So you don't want to go down that route. What it is first, it's a mix of many factors that you do need to go and find out what is the rate being given in that company and start with that rate. The other thing to note is that your increments will also be based on that income coming forward. If you are changing jobs, what they tend to say is maybe an increment of 50%, because a normal organization will be giving you anything like 5 to 10% based on inflation of the country. And then if you're being promoted or having a better job within the company, they will be giving you something like 30% when it's a very good time. So if you're changing jobs, you'll be getting anywhere from 50% going upwards. So those are the numbers that you need to be holding in mind when you're making these negotiations about how to move from where you are to where you want to go. Yes.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank
Seems
you.
like we have a lot of good pointers here.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks for that. In addition to what you've said, from my experience, I remember I was once sent an email to be invited to an interview. Then I just decided, because I have nothing to lose anyway, I responded and said, yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I look forward to joining the interview. And please, may I ask, what's the range that you're giving for this salary, for this particular job? Mm-hmm. And funny enough, the HR just replied and said, this figure. Sometimes I think we fear, we are like, oh, if I start asking about this, they might think my interest is that. But you see, that is also part of the benefits that you're looking forward, as much as, yes, you're going to give value. So that experience made me learn. Oh, so sometimes we fear, but HRs are not particularly not willing to give that information. So sometimes it's just good to ask. And I went to the interview knowing that, oh, this position is giving this much. So even when I was negotiating around what the HR had told me. Thanks.
Thank you. And we actually have an HR person here. So Oliver is the one who had said, you do not get what you deserve. You get what you bargain for. So do you mind clarifying that for us, Oliver, please?
Yes. Thank you very much, Kacho. So it's a very interesting question. And I think today's discussion makes very good sense. I like that it is put together with, budgeting and personal branding, because it feeds into that question. So when you're going for an interview, it's very important that you put your strong foot forward. You don't get what you deserve, to be honest, you never do. So you need to go there with the mindset to bargain. And that means, one, like Akacho said, make sure that you have your research really well. And then just be also honest with yourself and then give yourself a figure. What is the fair amount that you're willing to take that will give you motivation and that will just make you happy within that particular role? So that when you say a figure, it's a figure that at the end of the day is something that's fair for you. So there's something that Janet said, that, you know, HR are not gods. You also go for interviews and we fail at this interview. So at the end of the day, it's a bargain. It's a bargain. It's not you being interviewed for the role. You're also trying to interview and see, you know, is this company worth my time? Is it worth me going to join and add value? And for you to really learn this, it also means that you have to go for a lot of interviews so that you get a feel of, you know, how to negotiate, how to deal with various scenarios. So I think that is it. So always do your research, go for many interviews so that you learn how this works. HRs are not gods. In fact, most times they need you more than you need them. And then just put your best foot forward and say, okay, I am earning 20,000, but to be honest, I think I am worth 200,000. And this is why. And just give it a confident face. You will see them either cringe and just want to run away from you, or just say, yeah, this is the person you need, because you've put in a bold face and you show that you're worth their time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. And maybe just a last question for you. In your experience, is it common for somebody to jump that 30% that Joanne talked about? Like, let's say, if I was earning 40K, and then when I come to you, I ask for 60,000, is that like favorable in your experience?
Yes. So of course, it always boils down to the value. I'll give you an example. Last year around November, I went for an interview, and I just went for it. You know, one of those ones that you go, but you don't really look towards that job. So then the initial figure they quoted was really, really good, and I was about to accept it. And then when I went to submit my resignation to, you know, where I work, they also told me, you can't lose you, so we will revise your salary this much up. So I, of course, again agreed to the new revised salary at my workplace. And when I told the company that was interviewing me that I needed to reject their offer, they went ahead and revised it again up, almost by another, you know, half what this other company had given me. So it showed me a picture, actually, that most of the time we put ourselves below our real worth. So I think one of the really good encouragement is that even when you have a job, just go ahead and interview so that you benchmark yourself, because before you know that, you'll never truly know your worth. And then always just try to figure out what is it, the real amount that you are. Sometimes it sounds big in your head, but when you say it, it's actually maybe just half the budget the company is having. So before even asking, have a confidence about a figure that you really want. So it doesn't have to be 30% from my point of view. I've hired for roles where the first candidate is, you know, one figure towards $1 million Kenya shillings, and the second candidate, who is almost as good as that person, is you know, at 300,000. And you're wondering, you know, these two candidates, what's really the difference? So do your research and just get to know your real worth, and go for many interviews. I think that's the only best advice I can give. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That is so helpful. We all need to be more confident, and you have heard from a specialist there. Oliver has seen very many CVs, so I'm sure that one you cannot dispute. And you're told you need to go there. If you know you're worth 40K, go there confidently and know why you're asking for that 40K. So do we have any more burning questions as we almost conclude?
Yeah, mine is not a question, Kacho, but just to add on what Oliver said. And I'm not an HR expert, by the way. So what I've seen, I work in an NGO, in the NGO sector. So, and you know, there are categories, INGOs, local NGOs, and all that. And what I've seen is that whereas there's a lot of secrecy in the local NGOs on what salary structure is, it's very easy for you to underestimate yourself when you go to these INGOs, simply because you think the level that you are playing in the local NGOs, where the salaries are like that, is same everywhere. But in the NGOs, there are batches of salaries. And you know, once you know the batch that you are going for, then that's what you need to bargain for. And if you're called a program manager, for example, in local NGOs, and they give you like 150,000, and you are applying for a program manager in INGO, it might be twice or thrice the amount. So the name program manager should not tie you to what you are running now to bargain from that end. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mosetti. Yes, so I believe it depends on your sector. Like Paloma said, in the media, we know many of them are underpaid, but that's not to mean that you cannot have your side hustle and also go and do your consultancy. So even in the consulting world, like has been correctly said, it depends on the employer. If the UN is paying you, obviously you need to understand the UN rates when you compare with the local NGO. I believe, Joanne, you had something to add?
Yes, I wanted to add on to what Oliver was saying, that even if you're employed, going for interviews is very good for you. It helps you benchmark yourself where you are at. So it's a good practice to have. Even if it's not to say that you're necessarily looking for the job. No, it is to see whether your credentials are still going on correct. If there are changes you need to do, you just know what you need to change out of going for those interviews.
And actually, if I could add as well, I think what Oliver and even what Joanna has pointed out right now takes us back to our first session. You know, and when we discussed how your CV looks like, your presentation and all those things, because you're talking already like the person, maybe Daisy, for example, has already gotten through the door to have an interview. But I think Oliver, even maybe, and as well as Mosetti, they can also tell us your CV. If your CV is not correct, if it's just one of those copy and paste things, then you wouldn't be able to have the interview, and therefore you wouldn't be able to benchmark yourself. So there's, you know, there are levels, but before even you reach the interview, the physical interview, you must have done very well, prepared very well, and ensured that they're up to standard, that Oliver, when he then meets you, and then you are giving the figure of 200K to 1 meter, then he'll be like, yeah, you know what, Paloma, Joanne, Akacho, Daisy, you're quite worth it, and you're worth this and more.
Wow, this is such a great session. And I'm so excited. I believe we also have some people who have been here with us since round 1, which we started a few months ago. So I'd just like Janet to tell us, how has your experience been? And what have you learned by joining I Am Network? Karibu.
Thank you, Akacha, for this opportunity. Every time I see the ad for I Am Network, this is something I always bookmark and I always look forward to. And if there's any clashing thing, I always ensure, like for example, today I joined in late. I had a meeting with someone else together with my boss, but I really had to run here because of the value that I've been getting here. And I must say, this was just something that was timely, especially for some of us, young people. We're in our career journey. I remember the first session I joined, I think it was communicating with confidence. And sometimes you think just communicating is maybe how you put out words, but also like even Paloma has even just said now, things like your CV, they're speaking on our behalf. Someone else already is getting an idea about us. Even how we package ourselves in our social media channels, we are already communicating. Is there consistency? Maybe when a potential employer sees what is in my social media and also what perhaps is in my CV. So these are the things I've been trying to reflect and I must appreciate Akacho actually helped me out in my CV making, and sort of took me through how I can present myself and be market shady if I want to move to the next level. And just generally, even the views from Joan and Paloma, they've really helped me shape it, where I want to be, especially at this point in the pandemic. It has been a good time for sort of me to be able to reflect about my next in the career, and this being formed at this time where you're reflecting and you have people who can guide you and take you through it. I really do want to appreciate, and I must say you need to keep up with this program. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Janet. Janet is actually a former colleague of mine, so we always keep in touch, and she also inspires me. What she hasn't told you is she's also a musician. So I think we also need another forum to discuss our other talents outside of our careers. So I believe, unless the speakers have concluding remarks, our time is almost up. Joan?
It's just to thank you all for joining us for today's session. And yes, we do have finance. You cannot over-exhaust the discussion on finances, especially when it comes to personal finances. Yes, so we will be having, the feedback was quite good, so we will be continuing with another session on finances. But even to add to that, we do have training packages that are available. If you can reach out to us via email or even via our social media pages, Facebook or YouTube, we will be able to talk to one another and agree on what next. So karibuni sana, and thank you for being with us today.
Good. Yes, over to Joan.
Paloma.
Sorry, Paloma, sorry.
Akacho, it seems you're liking Joan's voice today. But really, thank you all for joining us, especially the ones who started with us on our first session. We were actually quite nervous. A number of us had not been, if I speak for myself, I've always been in the background, behind the screen, and now because of this IAM network, I'm in the front of the screen, and it's quite different how to air your views. But you as the audience have been very, very helpful. You've been very participatory in everything that you've done and shared with us, and the feedback that you have presented to us, it has allowed us to be able to grow. Even just not, if you look at where we started, from this Zoom channel, today, we're actually streaming on Facebook Live at the moment. So we've gone from the Zoom, we've gone to putting ourselves on Facebook, we've gone to our YouTube channel, which is IAM Network KE Online Mentorship Forum on YouTube, where all our clips and videos are there. And now we are streaming live on Facebook. And I'm sure in the next session, there'll be another thing. Maybe there'll be Twitter Live, one of my social media platforms of choice. But it's because of you, and it's because of your input and your sharing that we have been able to do this. Remember, we have a background in trying to help you. And we are also sharing our experiences with you so that you can get to a better place. So take up our challenges, think about everything that has been said, not just by ourselves, but even by the participants who have actually shared their stories, and become the better you that you want to be. Because remember, your future, your time is now. Gotcha.
Thank you, Paloma. And to highlight, you can follow us on Facebook at IAM Network. We also upload all of our videos on our YouTube channel. So please like and subscribe our page, IAM Network KE Online Mentorship. And to summarize, if you need any help with communication, leadership and change management, personal productivity, or personal finance, we are available for you at any time. So I'm quite excited, and I'm very happy that we had quite a large number today. And I think what we've also not said is we also choose our topics based on the feedback. So in our last polls, in our previous session, there was overwhelming feedback on dealing with finances. So what you saw today was just a summary of the tip of the iceberg. We will delve deeper into finances in our upcoming sessions. And we also will have experts on board to help us. So if you need any support or any mentor to guide you, please also feel free to reach out to Joanne, Paloma, or I. And we're here to support you. And we're very happy, and thank you for your time. Asanteni, and have a blessed weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot as well.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. See you next session.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.